Okay. Welcome, students, and our faculty and administrators, Dean Levy, and of course our distinguished panelists who braved difficult weather to be with us today. We lost some of our panelists due to weather, and apparently some of the students decided to no-show as well, which obviously we don't appreciate, but that's fine. I'll start with just some general scheduling remarks. So this evening, following the keynote address, we'll all move into the Star Commons where there'll be food and drinks and an opportunity to get to know the panelists a little bit, mingle and relax. As one of my co-chairs, Kristen Backus, said, tonight's sort of the appetizer of the event, and tomorrow's really the main course where you'll have the chance to substantively engage with different panels broken down into different sort of subject matters, different sort of destinations. So we ask that you do wake up tomorrow morning. I certainly sympathize with wanting to sleep in on a Saturday, but this is a Saturday to wake up early for, so we encourage you to come here for that. Some brief thank yous. Thanks to my fellow co-chairs, Dan Leslie and Kristen Backus somewhere, for all the hard work that they put in. To the first-year students on our 1L committee who gave a lot of time and energy this week also. The Career and Professional Development Center and the Alumni and Development Office for being supportive and providing us with different resources and contacts and helping us pull this together. And also to Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, who generously sponsored this event. You'll hear more from Bob Krakow, a Gibson Dunn attorney, in a little while. Just a few comments on the purpose of ESQ. We were trying to aggressively market this to students, and we got the frequent response, I already have a job, or I know what I want to do. And the purpose of this symposium is not to get a job or to decide what you want to do, or the purpose really is to learn about different opportunities, to learn about different career paths, to learn about different possibilities. And that's really what it's for. So it's a learning opportunity, an opportunity to meet people and to meet alumni and get to know the community that as students will all be a part of someday. Also would qualify that by saying this is not a comprehensive sort of list of things that you can do. There are any number of opportunities that you can do with a versatile degree, such as a JD. Certainly we don't have as many people from the public interest and public service sort of sector that we would have liked just based on our RSVPs, but Susan Prosness is here, and she runs a Rappaport Center at Suffolk University Law School, which specializes in pairing students with public service opportunities, and I'm sure she'd be happy to share details about those opportunities with you. So again, this is just a sampling, but it's an important lesson to take away that there are a number of things you could end up doing with the JD. The big firm isn't the only way to go. The big cities aren't the only places to go. And in addition to what we can learn about career paths, professional paths, and things like that, we can also learn by their example, like the example that the panelists are setting for us just by being here. It's important for us to realize that being at Duke Law, we are part of a community, part of and we'll continue to be a part of that community after we graduate. And their generosity, their commitment is an illustration of just how important that sense of community is. And with that, I'd like to welcome and thank Bob Krakow, 1981 graduate of law school and partner in Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher's Dallas office. Thanks so much for coming, Bob.
Thank you, Austin. I want to welcome everyone to the 8th Annual ESQ Career Symposium. I was to have been joined here by my partner, Chris Dussault from Los Angeles. Chris sends his regrets. He was not travel delayed, but Chris has just recently completed a rather exhausting trial. He was, along with my partner, Ted Olson and David Boyce, trying the Prop 8 case in California, challenging the constitutionality of the ballot initiative that invalidated same-sex marriage in California. Chris would have had some great stories to tell, but he's busy catching up with his family and the work that piled up on his desk, so he sends his regards and hopes to be back next year. Gibson Dunn is very pleased to be sponsoring this symposium. I'm personally very delighted to be here. Our firm has a rather long and very important relationship with the law school on many levels. We've had a number of people, including Chris currently, who have served on the Board of Visitors. Others of us have served in other roles and provided other support to the school, but what we've done for the school pales in comparison to what the school has done for us in terms of our careers and our law firm. We presently at Gibson Dunn, I did the count this week, have 36 Duke Law alums in the firm, 11 partners, 25 associates, and I think there's another 4 or 5 due to come out of the class of 2010. They are spread literally around the world. We're in virtually every domestic office, San Francisco, LA, Orange County, my office, Dallas, Denver, San Francisco, New York and Washington, as well as abroad in Munich and London and even Singapore. And I was mentioning to Dean Levy before we started that beyond just having all of these law grads in the firm, of our 7 domestic offices, 5 of the 7 have a Duke Law grad in the position of partner in charge. Pretty amazing when you think of how dispersed we are and how relatively small this school is and the biases you find in any large firm for, let's just get them all from Harvard or Yale or Chicago. And in trying to think about what does that mean, one of the things that tells me is that this law school is not just a good launching pad for finding a good job when you leave here. But more than that, I think that Duke Law prepares you and primes you to actually be successful on the career path that you choose. And that's an important distinction. And you're going to hear a lot about different paths. I certainly hope that a healthy percentage of you have some interest in pursuing a career in a big law firm in a big city. But we recognize that there are many, many other options out there, as Austin mentioned. And this weekend will give you an opportunity to further explore what it is that's the right fit for you, whether it's a smaller firm or working for a company in-house or a government job or a consulting company or public interest or academia. One of the great things about a law degree is that you have so many options in terms of where you might practice, what the setting might be, but as well geographically, where do I want to be and what kind of lifestyle do I want and what kind of law do I want to practice? There are so many different areas of law, and there's an almost endless number of combinations that you can piece together with these options, and I think the organizers, as usual, have done a great job of assembling a pretty diverse group, and I hope that you will pepper all of us over the next day or so with your questions so that you can, if you've not already done so, begin the process of making an informed decision of what the right career path for you is. This is not one size fits all. We all bring unique interests and characteristics and abilities to it, and a big part of finding that career that is really fulfilling to you is sort of examining yourself and studying the options, and hopefully over the next day or so you'll have a lot of opportunities to find out the good and the bad of different choices that you might want to make. So in conclusion, it is great to be back, even in this miserable weather, and on behalf of Gibson Dunn, I welcome you all to the symposium. And with that, let me turn it over to Dean Levy.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Gibson Dunn. Thank you, our 3 co-chairs. I know that I'm between you and hearing from Rich Baer, who I think is going to give a very interesting talk, put a little pressure on him, but I know it will be, and I will be extremely brief. This is a wonderful Duke Law School event, and it typifies so much about Duke Law School. It's organized by students. It's not part of the normal curriculum. It's part of the shadow law school that goes on every day here at Duke Law School, where in addition to the classes, there's so much else that is part of every student's education here. It's organized by students, and it collects the greater community of Duke Law School, the alumni who are still so very actively involved in the future of all of our graduates and of the future arc of this law school. When many of you came to Admitted Students Weekend around the country, you heard me give you a little pep talk about Duke Law School. And one of the things that I told our students was that you aren't just joining a law school for the next 3 years. You're actually joining a greater Duke Law network and community that will exist throughout your entire career. And I think this ESQ event it just typifies that. So to the law students who are here, you don't really need to be told this because you are here, but you might pass this along to those of your classmates who are not here. The world outside of law school is a changing, dynamic place. It's a place of possibilities, and sometimes those possibilities come to you, and that's very nice. They come unbidden and unlooked for, and you wake up and you get a phone call, as I once did, offering you a judgeship, and it wasn't something you really thought would happen, and that's wonderful when it happens. And that will happen to all of you, I very much hope. And then there are other times in life when, try as you might, things just don't work, and you have to find ways then to adapt to that and to make them work. So being flexible, being thoughtful, is being self-conscious about your strengths and your weaknesses, and keeping your curiosity about what's out there for you that you might be interested in. All of those things are very important. But I suppose the one thought I would leave you with is that as fun as law school is, as challenging as it is, it's not a good idea right now to just be kind of an accidental tourist while you go through law school. Just be, and as I say, I don't think I need to say this to the people in the room, just pass it along to your classmates. You want to think about what it is you're doing. You know, you're spending a lot of your energy, your time, your money. This is important. It's really important. And you can do really well when you leave here. You can have exactly the kind of career that you want, or you can just kind of bobble along and hope for the best. And I think right now it's better to put some direction into your life. Think about the skills that you want to get from law school. Think what it is that law school can do for you, and then go get it. Because believe me, it's here at Duke. And if it's not here, you can create it, just as the co-chairs have created this wonderful symposium. Thank you all for coming. Rich, thank you for coming. Bob, thank you. You're going to be introduced.
Just really briefly introduce Rich Baer. He graduated in 1983 after getting his bachelor's in Columbia University. And I'll let him tell you about how he arrived where he is now. His career took him eventually to a litigation firm in Denver, where he became the chairman of their litigation department before he joined Quest Communications International, where he's currently an executive and a general counsel for them. So we are thrilled that all our panelists are here. We are very glad that Rich Baer made it. His original flight was canceled, and he outsmarted the weather and made it a day early. So thank you, Rich Baer.
Well, I can assure you that no one from the class of 1983 would have been here on a Friday with this weather, except, of course, if there was a cocktail party afterwards. Thank you, Dean Levy. Thank you, Austin, and the other co-chairs. You put on a great symposium. I'm looking forward to the panels tomorrow. I think they're going to be terrific. I know the cocktail party or the cocktail hour is coming up. I'll heed the advice that I actually got once when I was a young prosecutor in Brooklyn, New York. I had tried a couple of cases in front of this one particular judge, and he called me up before I was going to sum up on this third case, and he said, "Baer, let me give you some advice on this summation." And this is a true story. He said, "It should have a beginning, and it should have an end, and they better be close together." And so I'll heed that judge's advice as we go through. Let me give you a little visual preview of my presentation. Now, hopefully this will all make sense in a little while. My daughter, my 12-year-old, said to me, she says, "Dad, you use a lot of visuals in your presentation because you're not a very good presenter." And she's right, you'll see that. But I do use a lot of visuals. So let's see if we can walk through this. And I've had a torturous career, I think, at best. I did not follow the typical career path of my colleagues out of Duke Law School. But eventually I ended up in Denver, as Austin mentioned, and I'm now General Counsel and Chief Administrative Officer of Quest Communications. We're a 30,000 employee company. We have about $13 billion in revenues. We're nationwide, as well as some operations overseas. When I graduated in 1983, I think Dean Carrington would have predicted that I was the least likely student to end up in where I ended up. So one of the messages I want to give you today is that there are many paths to pursue, and there are many ways to become a successful and, more importantly, a happy attorney. And afterwards, I'd be more than happy to sit around with you for as long as you want to talk about those different career paths and to talk about different ways to pursue what is a wonderful career as a lawyer. Through a lot of trial and a hell of a lot more error, I've learned what I believe, at least for me and my lawyers, we've got about 100 lawyers at Quest, what I believe are some of the most important ways to be successful, some of the core skills that we all need as lawyers. So what I want to talk to you about this evening is a little bit of what I call the blocking and tackling of being a great lawyer. And there are a lot of good lawyers in the world. There are a lot of good lawyers in the world. There are not that many great lawyers. So I want to give you at least my perspective, humble or not, as to what I think makes a great lawyer. And I'll try to interweave that with my career. I'll talk a little bit about hard work and the importance of hard work. And it's not just simply working hard. It truly is having intensity. Every great lawyer that I know has an intensity that allows them to distinguish themselves from every one of their competitors. I'll talk to you a little bit about constantly learning. Great lawyers are always trying to improve themselves. Great lawyers are wonderful at identifying mentors because we can learn from those who are more experienced than we are. And great lawyers also take jobs that make them better lawyers. They don't worry as much about the compensation. They don't worry as much about the prestige of the job. They look at, is this job going to make me a better lawyer? Talk to you a little bit about what I call the C's. These are the core skills that every great lawyer possesses. And the great thing about this is each one of you here today possesses these skills, and you are honing them throughout law school, and when you get out, you'll continue to hone them. And what's really spectacular about these core skills, and I was mentioning this to Dean Levy, these are the core skills of great lawyers, but these skills are transferable whatever you want to do. Some of the most talented people in any organization you go to, it might be a government agency, it might be a large corporation, some of the most talented leaders in these organizations are lawyers. And the reason they're lawyers is they have these core skills, the C's, that allow them to be successful. So I want to talk to you a little bit about those as well. All of these core skills, I believe, can contribute to you being a successful and happy attorney. They all there's a confluence of these. But there's one other factor to consider. And some of us are willing to admit it, many of us are not, and that is luck. And I am, without a doubt, one of the luckiest attorneys known to the profession, and I'm very free about admitting it. Now look, you're facing some truly unprecedented challenges. This legal market is horrible. There's no doubt about it. You know, we all read the headlines, and you know it's frightening. I got it. It makes us anxious. I got that. It's certainly challenging. But let me tell you, you will get through this. And there's an old African proverb that smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. And I can absolutely guarantee you that the toughest times in my career were the times when I learned the most and when I improved the most as an attorney. There's also, of course, Nietzsche to keep us through the night, but hopefully we don't have to go that far. Now, you will get through this. I remember in 1987, I was a fourth-year associate at a midtown law firm in Manhattan, and we had what became known as Black Monday, the largest one-day drop in the stock market in history. And all of a sudden, lawyers started to get fired. Associates would be called up to the managing partner's office at my firm, and like Cold War Russia, they would just simply disappear. It was a brutal time. It was an eye-opening time for all of us. My strategy, and this was before BlackBerries and cell phones, is I told my secretary to take the rest of the week off, and I hid in the library every day. So I figured if they couldn't find me, they couldn't fire me. And I'm not sure if that strategy worked or not, but I was able to get through. But even my friends and colleagues who had to leave that firm or other firms during these very, very difficult financial times, they all ended up on their feet. And the reason is, and I firmly believe this and always will, great lawyers will always have work. And you have to keep that in mind as you go through your career. The other thing I'd like you to keep in mind, and I work with a lot of law schools. There are law schools out in Denver, Colorado we deal with. You have to keep in mind how much each and every one of you has accomplished already. You are the best and the brightest that this country has to offer. You really are. You have achieved so much, or you wouldn't be here. You have faced every single challenge that life has thrown in front of you and been successful at it. You need to draw confidence from this. You are so good already, you don't even realize it. You're in for a big ride. It's a hell of a ride. It's a very, very tough profession, but it's also the most rewarding profession I think that is out there. I've got a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old daughter. Two daughters, they do not listen to a word that I say. My nickname at home is whatever. Honestly, if they were to take one piece of advice from their father, it would be to pursue a career in law. Even as challenging as it is today, it is a noble profession. It really is. And so keep that in mind as you go through these tough times. Now, I was, without a doubt, not ready for law school when I got here. I was not yet disciplined enough. Accidental tourist was an understatement. So I had a challenge when I was here. And I really struggled getting through law school. I was far more interested, I'm going to be honest with you, I was far more interested in dating undergraduates than I was studying. But there is always a silver lining. In 1981, I met my wife on a blind date at a tried-out sorority party. And we are still happily married today, 28 years later, and I have two wonderful daughters. So there is a bit of luck and a bit of silver lining everywhere. So not being the most studious of individuals at the time, I really faced a lot of challenges. Later on in my career, I got some great advice, though, that I'd like to impart to each of you. And it was advice that I got from the late Judge Vincent Broderick. Judge Broderick was a federal district court judge in the Southern District of New York. He was truly considered one of the lions of the Southern District of New York bench at the time. He had worked his way up. He was a police officer, and then he was a federal prosecutor, and then he was police commissioner, and then became a federal district court judge. And Judge Broderick really was a wonderful man. And he would come every year and speak to the young prosecutors who are starting in the different district attorneys' offices around New York. And he would always say to each one of these incoming groups, he says, the biggest mistake a young lawyer can make is to conclude too early in their career whether they are a good lawyer or a bad lawyer. And that advice really stuck with me, because there are very challenging times that you're going to face as a young lawyer. And you're going to question, am I cut out for this? Is this really the career that I should be pursuing? And I suggest you keep Judge Broderick's sage advice in the back of your mind. Don't get discouraged. It's a tough road to hoe, but again, if you keep at it, you will be incredibly, incredibly happy. I believe lawyers mature at different paces. I have a view that until you're out of law school 10 years, you shouldn't be allowed to speak, and until you're out of law school 20 years, you shouldn't be allowed to speak to a client. Now, of course, that is the old school approach, but lawyers do mature at different paces. Again, I was a very slow maturing lawyer. So my strategy, not having the greatest grades, was I needed to become a lawyer with some skill. So I thought, I'll be a prosecutor. I'll learn how to be a trial attorney. And so my strategy coming after my first year was to get a job in a district attorney's office in New York, because I was from New York originally. And this is one common theme. Every single job that I've taken in my career, I looked at it from one perspective and one perspective only. Would it make me a better attorney? I never looked at the compensation. Every job I ever took, I accepted the job before I even knew what I was going to be paid. I never looked at the prestige of it. I looked at, would it make me a better attorney? And I suggest if you follow that approach, you will never be unhappy, and you will always be constantly improving. So I strive to do that, and the second summer of law school, I worked at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office as an intern. And while my other colleagues from law school were dining at Le Cirque and were going around on these booze cruises around Manhattan and really having a wonderful summer, I was schlepping back and forth from Long Island into Manhattan because I had to stay with my parents because I wasn't making enough money, and I actually had to take a second job during the weekends just to make ends meet. But here's what was great about it. I was working with a young prosecutor. She was brilliant. She was very, very tough, very brusque, chain smoking. She was brutal. But I was like a fly on the wall. I sat in her office every single day, watching how she dealt with witnesses, watching how she dealt with detectives, watching how she would prepare to go to court. I was like a sponge trying to suck everything I could out of this experience. She was just a wonderful, wonderful lawyer. And this brings me to one thing that I'd like you to think about. Great lawyers are great at developing mentors. Now, a lot of us think, well, someone's going to take me under their wing and teach me how to become a good lawyer. No. Great lawyers identify people they admire, who they want to practice like, and go to those people and develop relationships, develop mentor-mentee relationships with those individuals. They do not wait to be taken under the wing. They go out and they identify people who they want to be their mentors and pursue it. And so that's what I did with this young prosecutor. I worked with her, and again, I picked her brain every single day. And you know who that young prosecutor was? Of course you don't. It was Sonia Sotomayor. And so you never know who your mentors may end up being is another thing to keep in mind. So after I got out of law school, with all my friends going to Davis Polk and White and Case and these other wonderful firms, I went to the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. And so while they were handling these massive litigations or negotiating these incredibly complex transactions, I was investigating murder cases on the streets of Brooklyn. But again, the district attorney's office in Brooklyn was filled with wonderful lawyers. Lawyers that we would probably look down upon a little bit, didn't have the credentials, didn't have the educational background that we think is required to be a successful lawyer. But these are some of the best trial attorneys you could ever find. And again, I identified mentors every moment that I was there and learned from these wonderful trial attorneys how to be a litigator. The detectives were also another wonderful source of mentors. I worked with some Brooklyn South homicide detectives who taught me more about how to question a person on the witness stand and more about eliciting information than I could ever have learned in law school or at a law firm. These people could question the most difficult and truculent witness and get them to tell the truth. So I again, used them as mentors as I went through my career. Of course, you also learned how to take a group of 12 people who didn't know each other, who came from diverse backgrounds, and take those 12 people and get them to reach a unanimous decision. And that type of training of summing up and convincing juries to make what I always felt was the right decision, that was some of the best training any young lawyer could ever have had. The approach I took was intensity, was hard work, because I was not the brightest lawyer in the Brooklyn DA's office. I certainly wasn't the most well-spoken or the quickest on my feet. So my approach was very, very simple. I would be better prepared than any attorney that I went up against. I would go out on weekends and go through housing projects with a uniformed officer and knock on door after door after door, looking for additional witnesses who might be willing to testify on cases I was handling. On the documents we would produce in discovery, the police reports, I would memorize every single word in every single one of those reports. So when I went into court, even though the opposing attorney, she probably was far better than I ever could be, I was better prepared. And that allowed me to prevail on a hell of a lot more cases than not. After I spent 4 years at the DA's office, I decided to go to a big firm. I went to a big Manhattan firm, which will remain nameless. But there was a good story I always like to tell about joining this firm. When I got to the firm, I had 25 jury trials. Now, this was a big midtown firm. They handled huge litigation. And I was working with one of their most senior partners. And he was a wonderful litigator. He had argued cases in front of judges around the country. He had been to a number of circuit courts. He had been up to the Supreme Court on a really significant case. And we went out on a client pitch together, he and I. And he was talking with the client. And again, at the time, I had 25 jury trials. And so he says to the client, between Rich and me, we've got 25 jury trials. So the experience you can get by taking some different paths is one that can put you in good stead. Anyway, I spent 4 years at the firm. I learned a hell of a lot. I learned everything I didn't learn at the DA's office about being careful, about learning how to write and communicate well. And after about 4 years there, I received a call in 1992 from a law school classmate of mine from Duke. And he said Sherman & Howard, which is a Denver law firm, the oldest Denver law firm, was looking for a litigator. And they asked me to come out and interview with them. So I went out and interviewed. And it was a wonderful firm. And they had a very unique offer for me. Sherman & Howard was doing a lot of work for TCI, which at the time was the largest cable company in the country. And they were doing all of TCI's corporate work and had been doing all of TCI's litigation. But a couple of litigators had left and had taken all the litigation work with them. So the offer that was made to me is, come in, and if you can reestablish our relationship with TCI as a litigation client, you can become partner. And we'll give you 18 months to do it. If you don't reestablish the litigation relationship in 18 months, we'll fire you. So I was weighing, move to Denver or stay at a big firm in New York and be a service partner. I said, what the hell? let's move to Denver. My wife couldn't wait to get out of New York City, so to Denver we went. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. There was a lot of luck involved in everyone's career, and this was luck. I got a call from a colleague. That was lucky. But what was even more lucky is when I got to Denver, the general counsel of TCI had just fired the head of litigation on his in-house staff. He had just asked him to leave. So I made a proposal to the general counsel. I said, look, how about if I come down and manage all of your litigation until you hire a new litigator? I'll go through every one of your cases, and I'll get them ready. I'll give you an assessment of how I think the outside lawyers are doing. And I'll do it at a heavy discount. And he said, great, I'll take you up on it. But to convince Sherman and Howard that this was a good deal, because this was in 1992, before discounting was something that was in vogue, I had to commit to Sherman and Howard that I would handle all my other cases that they were assigning to me. So what I would do, and this goes back to that hard work and intensity piece, I would go to Sherman and Howard at 5 every morning and work until 7:30. Then I would drive down to TCI, spend the entire day at TCI going through, getting their cases ready and prepared, giving assessments of them. I'd drive back to Sherman and Howard at 6 at night and work to midnight. And I did that every single day for 6 months. It was grueling. It was very, very difficult. But it was an amazing opportunity because I got to go through every single one of a major client's cases and really understand the cases and understand their business. And there was also a wonderful opportunity because I would sit down with the general counsel and I would say, here's one that you should keep with outside counsel, and here's one you should give to me. And here's one that you should give to outside counsel, and here is one you should give to me. And I built a wonderful practice from that experience. Representing TCI, I was handling their litigation around the country. I was able to leverage that through a lot of hard work to represent a lot of other communication companies in the Denver area. And I built a terrific practice. I was named chairman of the litigation department after a couple of years, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. It was a lot of luck, but a wonderful experience. In 2000, late 2000, early 2001, I got a call from one of my clients. They wanted me to come in as deputy general counsel. And I figured, what the hell, I'll take a flyer. It wasn't for the prestige. It wasn't that great of a job. I was going to be one of 2 deputy general counsel. It certainly wasn't for the compensation. But what I thought was it would make me a better attorney. I would get more responsibility as far as managing people, and I would learn new areas of law beyond simply litigation. So I joined TCI in early 2000, and the moment I got there, all hell, everything went to hell in a handbasket. We were faced with FBI investigation, state attorney general investigations, class actions, derivative lawsuits, congressional investigations. We were about to be debarred. Our stock went from over $60 to about $1.50. We were on the verge of bankruptcy, literally. We would sit there wondering if we were going to make payroll the next day. In 2002, a new CEO came on board in June of 2002. And I approached him because I knew he and the then existing general counsel, the fellow I worked for, weren't going to get along. And I said, look, I'll help you try to do a search to find a new general counsel. And we started to do that. And after 6 months, he couldn't find a general counsel that he clicked with. So he said, Rich, why don't you become general counsel and just do it for a year? Now, and this is no exaggeration, I was the least qualified lawyer in America to be general counsel of this company. I really was, but I accepted the job with a commitment from the CEO and his CFO, both who were very experienced executives who had managed a number of very complex companies in a lot of different industries. I had to deal with them. I said, if you guys will mentor me and show me how to be a good general counsel, how to be a good leader, I will take this job. And they did. They would sit down with me day in and day out and not just talk to me about management issues and leadership issues. They would talk to me about law, legal issues. I would brainstorm with them about one case or the other. They were just wonderful, wonderful mentors. And I, again, acted like a sponge to suck them dry. So eventually, we were able to get through each one of these cases, each one of these investigations. And I like to say we came out smelling like a rose, but the rose didn't look as good as the daisy. So, but it really was a wonderful way to start my career as general counsel. Now, when I took over the Quest Law Department, it was very much like a burnt-out city. Morale was absolutely horrible. Our attrition rate was sky high. It really was a difficult and unpleasant place to work. And we really had a lot of management and leadership challenges. But what we did was every day we spent time, my team and I, on trying to improve the department, on trying to make it a better place to work, on trying to make it a more respectful environment, on trying to make it an environment where people felt valued. And I'm very, very proud to say that I became general counsel in 2002, and in 2008, our department was named the best legal department in the country by Corporate Counsel magazine. And we were able to do that, again, by focusing on the people, on focusing on making the environment a better one to work at. So that experience, and as we were working on improving the law department over that 6-year period, it was a little like trying to rebuild an airplane while you were flying it, but we learned a lot. And what I learned about the most is what are the most important core skills for an in-house lawyer. And it's not just for in-house lawyers, but I was really focused on those. And that's where we come to what I call the C's. Communication, critical thinking, consensus building, caring, conscience, and courage. So let me go through these very, very quickly, because I don't want to take too much more time. Communication. Great lawyers are able to take the most complex, hideously difficult issues and make them easy and accessible to understand. Great lawyers don't just worry about talking to judges and juries. Great lawyers look at all of the different constituencies that you need to communicate to. And particularly today, when business is so complex and the environment is so difficult, every communication that a great lawyer is involved with has to take into account all of these different groups. I spend half of my time in my job today looking at our communications that we're making externally and internally at our company. And the only reason I can do that is through the training I've received as a lawyer. Communication, though, is a two-way street. Communication is not simply you speaking or you writing. It's about listening. What's the most effective, or what's the most important thing about cross-examining a witness on the stand? The question? No. It's listening to the answer. What's the most important thing about communicating to a judge? Is it how effective you are as a presenter? No. It's listening to the judge's questions. What's the most important thing about negotiating a deal? Is it how creative you are in structuring the deal? No. It's about listening to your client and the other side. So again, truly great lawyers are wonderful listeners. Critical thinking. This is a skill you have today. You would not be here at Duke Law School if you didn't already have this skill. And I know through the wonderful professors that you're working with, you're just continuing to hone this. You distill information, you analyze it, you decide. And again, great lawyers are spectacular at this, but what great lawyers really can do is they can help organizations, they can help groups of people think critically as well. Because lawyers, above all other professions, above all other specialties, lawyers think better. The best thinkers at Quest Communication, myself excluded, are our lawyers. But one thing to keep in mind, and particularly as you go through working at law firms to the extent you're doing it, is you got to worry about issue spotting. Good lawyers spot issues. Great lawyers solve problems. And you always have to keep that in mind. There's nothing that drives me more crazy as a general counsel than to have one of our outside lawyers come in and say, well, here's an issue you should be concerned about. I got that. I know the issues I need to be concerned about. What I need are solutions. And the great lawyers are the ones who can deliver solutions to us. Consensus building, teamwork. Lawyers are wonderful teammates. Why? Because of our ethical obligations when we represent an organization. We don't represent individual employees. We don't represent a director or an officer. We represent the entire organization. And because of that training, because of that focus on working and representing an entire organization, we're wonderful at bringing consensus, getting a group to reach a decision. And it's remarkable how many business executives are not able to bring a team together to reach a decision. But lawyers have, I believe, honed this, or great lawyers at least, are able to hone this, this core skill. So lawyers can be the playmaker in many, many organizations and bring teams together. Caring. Now, this is funny. Most people think lawyers are the least caring, least emotional profession around. And they're right. But great lawyers have empathy for their clients. The greatest lawyers are ones that care deeply about how their clients will end up. Great lawyers care about their clients more than anything in the world. Conscience, integrity. I believe lawyers can be the conscience of any organization. And again, it's our ethical training, our focus on the rules of professional conduct that have us always asking questions. And great lawyers don't ask, is it legal? Great lawyers ask, is it right? And when you ask that question, always keep in mind the M&M rule. Now, I learned the M&M rule from Craig Baer. Craig Baer is a former chairman and CEO of Intel. He was on our board for a number of years, and he taught me the M&M rule. And what is the M&M rule? When judging whether you should do something as a company, as an individual, you should always ask two questions. The first is, how will it appear in the media? What will it look like on the front page of the Wall Street Journal tomorrow? And the second question, and this is not facetious, is, what would your mother think? And if you apply the M&M rule to every judgment that you have to exercise, you will never, ever go wrong. The last C is courage. This is the most important thing, particularly in this day and age where lawyers, inside lawyers, outside lawyers, are coming under increased scrutiny from not just their clients, but from government regulators, from prosecutors. Lawyers are losing their courage. It's very easy these days to have a lawyer, whether it's inside or outside lawyer, tell you no, you can't do something. And the reason is, if they say no, they'll never be second-guessed. No one will ever look at their advice later on down the line. Now, oftentimes, no is the right answer. And it takes some courage to tell a forceful, strong client, no, you shouldn't do that, when no is the right answer. But sometimes, yes is the right answer as well. That yes, this is a reasonable course to pursue. Sure, you may get second-guessed. Sure, we may have the government really questioning why we're doing this. But what we're doing is fair and right and within the law. And it takes courage to give that advice. And in this day and age, fewer and fewer lawyers are willing to exercise courage. But the truly great ones do. So real quickly, you can choose a lot of paths. But when you do, I would suggest to you, if you focus on the C's, if you focus on hard work and intensity, if you focus on constantly improving, you'll never go wrong. So it's good to have a little luck. What I want to talk about next real quickly is just a couple of different career paths beyond the traditional going to a big firm or taking a clerkship. My father always told me if you could sell women's shoes, you could do anything, and it was the best training ever. I'm not suggesting any of you go into sales Nor am I suggesting, and this is a real headline that the ABA Journal had just earlier this week. I was amazed. I'm not suggesting you go into the cupcake business, although there are people making a decent amount of money. One thing to keep in mind is the public sector. Now, we all know about the really high-profile, wonderful public sector jobs that have a lot of cachet, but there are a huge number of public sector jobs, government jobs, that are absolutely spectacular. Why? Because you'll become a better lawyer. Oftentimes, you'll become a much better lawyer than if you go to a firm. You will come out better. And if you come out as a better lawyer, I guarantee you that will be better for your career. So think about those government jobs, even the ones like the Brooklyn DA's office, which don't have quite the cachet that working at Gibson Dunn does, but you can get some pretty good training there. What I want to talk to you now about is innovation. And I read the press release, and under the dean's leadership, you're now having a LLM in innovation. The timing on this is spectacular. And I'm really not here to pump this. I read this last week, and I was amazed. The legal industry is remarkable. The legal industry is the only industry that has not changed in the last 200 years and is proud of that fact. It's true when you think about it. But what that means for you who are early on in your career is there are new opportunities available to pursue innovative approaches to the legal field. And this was not, frankly, available when I was coming out of law school. It is available now for you. And what I want to do is touch on some real-life examples that I'm aware of, various companies I've worked with. It is time for a change. So let me touch on a couple of companies that are out there today. Falcon Discovery. This is run by a guy named Don McLaughlin. He was an associate of mine at Sherman and Howard. He learned all about electronic discovery working with me. He came over with me to Quest, worked there for a couple of years. He knows more about electronic discovery than 99% of the outside lawyers in the country. He knows about the software you need. He knows about how to manage huge document production cases. He started his own company. The guy's got a wonderful life. He lives up in Steamboat Springs with his wife and his kids. He commutes down to Denver when he needs to. He has created this wonderful company. He's got about 25 employees. He's a CEO. He's getting offers to have his company purchased by a number of different firms. He's not selling yet, but he's doing great. And he's approaching the legal field with innovation and with entrepreneurship. Brightleaf. This is a bunch of lawyers and software technologists up in Boston. They've come up with a document automation platform. A what? A document automation platform that puts together complex contracts. We enter into 15,000 contracts a year. We have our lawyers just slaving over these contracts. These guys have a system that can allow a salesperson to put together a contract with approved different provisions, create this contract, and then price the deal so it reflects the risk that the salesman took in putting together these different provisions. So if the indemnification wasn't giving us as much protection as we'd want, we'd price a deal higher so it would be adjusted for the risk. This is all done through software. Again, this company has lawyers and software technologists there. They're going to be incredibly successful. They're very entrepreneurial. Great company. H5 Technologies. I don't know if any of you have heard of H5 Technologies. They're out in San Francisco. This is a company of lawyers and linguists. And this group will meet with an outside law firm who's handling a litigation for a large company. And it'll be typically a litigation with a large number of electronic documents. And these lawyers and these linguists will learn the case from the outside firm. They'll learn who the witnesses are. They'll learn what the legal theories are. And they will design complex algorithms to search this mass of electronic data. And this search technology can replace the hordes of associates that big firms throw at reviewing these documents. This technology, and we've actually tested it, it's wonderful technology. This technology can search an immense database and find more responsive documents than human beings, find less non-responsive documents than human beings, and find more privileged documents than human beings. So it's a wonderful company. These guys are going to hit a home run. I'm going to tell you, they're going to be incredibly successful. Again, they have a bunch of lawyers there. Again, it's not a traditional job that any of us would even think of pursuing, but there are these type of opportunities out there. Lastly, I want to touch on this. Anyone recognize her? Lonely Girl, 15? The most popular YouTube video. It became a TV series on YouTube. The most popular TV series ever on YouTube. It was created by a guy who dropped out of med school and a lawyer who was a first-year associate at Mitchell Silberberg in LA. They met at a cocktail party. They came up with this idea of having a video on YouTube. They created this TV series which really took the world by storm. They created a second TV series after that called Wendy Modern. They now have a company called EQUAL, E-Q-U-A-L, where they've leveraged their success here on the internet into an internet branding company where they do branding for large corporations around the world. They do Paula Deen's branding. They do Crystal Light's branding. They're doing Philadelphia cream cheese branding. The lawyer, the two partners, one doctor, one lawyer, I had dinner with them on Wednesday night. He is 4 years out of law school. He has these corporations paying him millions of dollars to develop internet branding. He knew as much about internet branding 4 years ago as any of us in this room. Again, there are many opportunities out there. You just have to look for them and think aggressively. Joel Henning, very well-respected consultant in the legal field. He was just quoted the other day that it's a great time to start a firm. I know tomorrow you're going to hear from a lot of small firms. Listen to them. They've got some wonderful opportunities. Working at a small firm can be a terrific experience. Whatever you do, focus on the C's. Hopefully you'll have a little luck. What I want to remind you is the race is a long one. Don't get discouraged. And lastly, keep in mind, each one of you, you really are superstars. You're amazingly successful already. And keep in mind the wonderful words of Eleanor Roosevelt. Future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. Here's my email address, my telephone number. Call me, email me whenever you'd like. I'm happy to talk to you about career. I'm happy to talk to you about different strategies to employ. I've got a million ideas. Few of them are great, but I've got a million ideas on what to do, and I'm happy to talk to you. I've had a lot of mentors in my life. I still do, and I'm happy to serve in that role. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, well, thanks, Rich, and thank you all. And we're going to now head to the Star Commons for some drinks and some food.